Hi, everyone. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. If you're watching it on the internet or listening to a podcast version of the show, make sure to subscribe so that you get notified when a new show is released. And if you'd like to find links to videos or MP3 files, just go to miamighostchronicles.com, and you can also submit any eerie experiences you've had at the Submit Your Story tab. Also, hook up with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can find information not only about new shows, but also about monthly free merchandise giveaways. So get comfortable, enjoy this new episode, and just imagine it's a dark and stormy night where not a creature is stirring, not even a mouse. And if a creature is stirring, you hope it's a mouse. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How is everybody doing today? Good, I hope. Over here for once in South Florida, you can tell I'm wearing long sleeve because it's actually in the 40s. Yes, it's the 40s, even though you guys might not see this, which, by the way, compared to the rest of the country is pretty good. Yeah, we're right now, this is right after Thanksgiving. You know, you guys won't see the show for a little bit. Like the northern part of the United States is having blizzards and severe snowstorms. So, yeah, I'm kind of happy that even if it's in the 40s and I'm firing up our chimney, the fireplace is already, we're getting wood for that. People are supposed to be thinking that's overkill, Marley. But still, down here it is very cold. But anyway, part of the reason that I'm so excited today, of course, is because of the guest that I have with us today. And this is a gentleman by the name of Michael Lara. Okay, now, he is the author of Lessons from the Other Side, and he's also a radio show host. Uh, but besides hosting the radio show, he's had his own personal experiences with the paranormal and UFO sightings. And even everybody already knows that my questions is about asking my guests about their childhood experiences, if they've had any. Well, in this case, right off the bat, we know Michael experienced two out of body experiences at the age of 10, which we're going to ask him about that in a minute. And later on in life, I mean, he's had, in other words, since childhood, he's had different types of supernatural events that he's either experienced or been witness to. Again, we're also going to ask him, and he's hopefully going to tell us about his encounters with UFOs. Uh, all of those things, and I've mentioned it on other shows where sometimes those things go hand in hand. UFO sightings and a parallel sometimes people having other type of paranormal events that at first glance might think there's one thing has nothing to do with the other, but not really. Uh, Now he's originally from Rochester, New York. He's been living in South Carolina since 2008, and he's a father and a grandfather. And hey, you know what? Let me tell you something. There's something about speaking myself as a mother and a grandmother. It comes with the wisdom of seeing a lot of changes, and I've spoken about this before in the paranormal field, because like everybody knows, since I was doing paranormal research and investigation since the 90s. This was before digital photography. This was when you had to actually spend a lot of money sometimes to develop photographs, and then, of course, the evolution of the paranormal field. So, of course, I've always said how excited I am when I have a guest that has witnessed it, if not firsthand, but can sees what's been happening in this field. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not for the better. But anyway, let me bring him on. How are you doing today, Michael?
I am doing just fine, and I thank you so much for having me on your show today.
No, absolutely. It is my pleasure. And right off, like I said, right off the bat, we already know that you had that out of body experience as when you were 10 years old, which is very young. Can you tell us more about that? How did that come about?
Yeah, and that's kind of where all the weirdness started. And I was somewhere around 9 or 10 years old at the time. And well, the first one I shared a bedroom with my brother, And well, I woke up one night and got out of bed, and something didn't seem right. The furniture was all changed around. Just things looked different, And I said, "What the heck's going on?" I looked
Okay.
back and I could see myself still laying in the bed. And
Oh
I'm
my
thinking,
God.
okay, maybe it's a dream or something. But, as time went on, I could tell this was no dream. I'm trying to wake my brother up and I'm telling him, hey, Scott, you're going to be in trouble. You moved the furniture around. I'm just trying to get a reaction out of him so I know I'm not crazy. And he's not budging. My hand would, I could go against his shoulder with my hand
Right.
almost like where I don't even remember if I could feel him or not, but my hand wouldn't go any further. It's like, but I couldn't budge him. So I go
Wow.
to the bedroom door and I open the door to leave the room, and that door, and I, grew up in this house. Nothing's changed. I open the door and it's not leading to the hallway. It's going into the closet. I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? So I go to the closet door thinking, well, maybe the closet will lead out to the hall. And I open that door and it's still the closet. So I couldn't leave this room. And my parents' room was on the other side of the wall. And my dad, he's the type you don't wake him up. He works hard. If you're
Right.
waking up, you better be in pain. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to wake him up. I'm like, yeah, Dad, come kick my butt. Whatever you
Yeah.
gotta do,
Right. Yeah.
just get me out of this, right? And
Yes.
so nothing's working. And I remember going to back over to my bed, and all of a sudden I just sucked back into my body, and I sat up, and I'm telling you, I was very unsettled. Couldn't sleep the rest of the night. Just really weird. And I'm thinking, all right, maybe that was just a crazy dream or something. I
Right.
really wasn't sure. And so I talked my parents into moving my room, now moving me into another room, and
Okay.
I moved in with my other sibling. And well, the same thing happens again. And at this point, okay, so now I'm convinced that something's going on, but I don't know
Okay.
what. And I tried to explain it to my parents, but I think they're thinking, all right, good imagination, good dream. And as the years have gone by now, I've thought this through more. Now that I've done my show for 11 years,
Right.
I've talked to enough people where now I'm questioning what happened those two times, those two nights, because I've never wanted to get into the whole, oh, I've been abducted thing, and I don't think I have. But
Okay.
one of the hypotheses that I've got here is that, I've had abductees come on and tell me that they've had it happen since they were a child, and
Right.
that when the aliens would take them to these ships, that they would make them feel comfortable by making the room that they're in look like their bedroom. And so now I don't think that's
That's
my case, but I wonder sometimes about
right.
it.
Right. Like, was it like a hologram or a mirage kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah. And
really
as I remember,
that's a very interesting concept. You know that, right?
yeah, it is. And it's hard for me to believe when I think about it. I almost feel kind of weird even saying it because
Yeah.
I'm me. Aliens don't
Right. Right.
abduct.
Right. Right. No. No, and let me ask you, Michael. At that time that happened, was there anything going on in your life that you think precipitated this?
Nothing that I can remember.
Right. No
Nothing.
sightings or no internal stress. Nothing that you could say. You know what? It was after this, or I saw this, or that all of a sudden.
No, but sightings followed after that,
Ah. Okay. Okay. Okay.
but not until I was an adult. And
Okay.
that's when I had my own kids. Then I started having sightings, but before that, no, nothing.
How about your siblings? Did any of them have any experiences?
I've never asked them, and that's a great question. And why? Here I am, the radio talk show host, and I've never asked any of them that question. I think I'm
Right.
gonna.
Well, you know what? You wouldn't be the first one. I've heard of people having experiences as kids. Nobody talks about it. Then when they're all grown up, and a lot of times they've even moved away, then everybody comes out with their stories of their own experiences. But while it was happening, nobody said anything, including parents, by the way. And it's almost
Yeah.
like the 20-year reunion where then everybody gives their version and everybody's looking like, you, that happened to you? Yeah, and that happened to you. So you never know. Maybe they're going to tell you something you'd be surprised to find out.
Well, and that's true. I mean, I've never asked. I think maybe my brother, when the day had happened, I might have asked him if he remembered
Yeah.
me trying to wake him up. or something like that. But I never, since then I've never actually, hey, has this ever happened to you? Or
Right.
I should ask him because maybe both of us were taken.
Or maybe he had an experience, and who knows? A lot of people will do exactly what you say. Oh, I had a really bad dream, or man, there was a stretch there. I was having these really bad nightmares. People can go into denial. It's like, I really don't want to explore that this might be real.
Well,
But that,
yeah, we tend to do that because it's just, I don't know if you're, I mean, there's some people out there who, I mean, they'll still say anything. I mean, but me, I don't know. I'm a regular person and
right.
I don't deal with aliens every day. I talk about them, but I don't,
Right,
so
right, right, right. And
it's,
well, at first blush, it doesn't look. It doesn't sound like a. It doesn't look like an abductee kind of scenario, like you said, because it was just this thing, like you said, an out of body experience. And
that's
maybe that
exactly,
is all it was. Maybe that is all it was. Because you know what? You always hear people that they meditate and they practice and they practice and they practice to achieve the out of body experience. But sometimes maybe you're a natural born OBEer. I've heard of that. That you don't have to really go. And I had my own experience. Was This was as an adult, and I wasn't practicing meditation or anything. Where, um, and it's really funny that you mentioned that. I came back and I saw myself lying in bed. And it was really quick. I had been having some type of weird dream, one of these weird dreams, symbolic, because that's how our subconscious speaks to us. But it was one of these. But then at the end, I see myself lying on the bed, but my bedroom is shifted around. In other words, instead of, like inverse, like my bed, instead of being on one side of the bedroom, it's on the other side.
yeah.
And I see, check this out. I see like a pudgy guy in a toga leaning over, looking at me into my face. And then he
Uh-huh.
looks up and looks across, like sees me, like the ethereal me. Because I'm seeing my body lying down asleep in the bed. And he's leaning over me, looking at me in the face. And then all of a sudden, it's like he looks up, sees me, and just disappears. And it's like, as he's disappearing, I pop back into my body and I woke up. And that was, like you said, it was one of those experiences like, man, what a dream. But then I'm thinking, this wasn't a dream. It was like very, and now that you mentioned, that's why I said it was, the room was inversed. My bed, everything about the whole bedroom was okay. It was just that the bed was on the other side. Like, it was
Yeah.
weird. But
Yeah.
I
The
know exactly
furnace.
what you meant as far as everything was kind of reversed or changed or.
It's almost like it was my son had mentioned this the other night. He says talking about a mirror universe, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
almost like the room was, like I was looking through it through a mirror, like everything
Yes,
that was
exactly.
right.
Like you're looking at it through a mirror. Exactly what I meant. Right, where when you see, the stuff that's on the left hand looks on like on the right hand in the mirror image, like that. That's what it looked
Yeah,
like.
yeah, it's incredible stuff. I mean, and here's what got me questioning it later in life is that I had one more out of body experience in 2004 as an adult.
Yes.
And it was much, much different than the ones I had as a child, meaning as an adult, I was able to go. I went, a matter of fact, my mother had come back to me. I mean, I don't want to, jump ahead here,
Okay.
but I had this other out of body experience and I was able to leave and do, go where I wanted. Uh,
Okay.
unlike as a child. And I often would ask people who've had these experiences, well, when you were a child, were you able to leave the room? And oh yeah, it was like I was able to go where I want. And I'm like, well, why was I restricted then? Because I couldn't. So
Right.
interesting.
And it also depends. I think some people that are intentionally trying to get an OB experience, kind of like they understand I
Yeah.
can, as or in other words, they kind of know what they're doing. Whereas when you had that experience, that was like, I imagine you must have, like you said, you were like thinking, man, somebody's gonna get in trouble because the bedroom has been switched around. So,
Yeah.
this was not intentional on your part. This happened to you, and
It did. Yeah.
I
No
want to
intention.
say that as much as you could say, well, it's a dream, but that same thing. Usually, dreams, even weird dreams, you don't see that inversion, that mirror image. I mean, you see, crazy
Yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah.
those details usually, it's like that's not a dream. That's not a dream. Those type of details are, that's not a dream. And again,
And and these things have stuck with me through my life. I mean, some stuff you forget, and someone might
right.
remind you, oh yeah, well, I've never forgotten any of this. I mean, every detail of it, and so there must be a reason why it's not put away in my subconscious, and
Sure.
instead that it's right there on the bookshelf to
Right.
read.
And this is the thing. Everybody's has, nightmares, of course, and weird dreams. In general, after even the most horrific nightmares, after 2 or 3 days, they kind of fade, Like,
Yeah,
if nobody, most people do not remember. The only times I think that people actually remember dreams or nightmares or something is there's some edge of realism to them. I've heard of people saying, I remember this dream because I dreamt in color, because we don't realize that a lot of times we dream like monochromatic, like no color, like, and then when you have a dream in color, it's so vivid, and it's almost like you said, if we were going to remember all the dreams we've had, we don't. We don't. We only remember the ones that there was some significance to them.
right. You know
Uh,
what I think the dream state, I think it's a hell of a party place, and I think that it's somewhere where our spirit or subconscious goes once we get it's like the body is like our children, and
yes.
the consciousness says, "Oh my God, I finally got that body to sleep. How's
Oh,
everyone?"
yeah.
You know? And so we get together in this dream state, and then you're not supposed to take it back with you. So we're not supposed to remember, I
Right.
think, a lot of it. But some of it we do because it's important.
Well,
You
it's
know,
like I think also that, and I'm sure you've heard of this, that during sleep is when basically we quiet down from everyday life, our mind, our to-do list. You know how everybody's running around, especially lately, where everybody's trying to multitask.
yeah,
All of a
I know
sudden,
that.
it's like your mind starts to quiet down and actually let stuff like this come through. Um, and a lot of people, I tell people don't realize, like, when you've heard of people not remembering certain things or amnesiacs, and
Yeah,
I tell people, or I don't know if you've heard of people that say, "Oh, I never remember my dreams," and I'll say, you know what, the mind is going to try to preserve your sanity at all costs. And usually, what that means is if you remembering something would be so disturbing that your sanity would be in peril, your mind will try to forget it. That doesn't mean that just because you can't remember a dream doesn't mean it's but in other words, from the very moment that you were able to remember that experience, I mean, you were able to handle it. It's not like, in other words, you were meant to. Even though I do agree with you that sometimes it's we don't remember a lot of stuff, because I think it would make living very difficult if
right.
if you think about it, other dimensions or parallel universes, we'd be like, huh?
Well, it's like no, it's like all other vehicles. You get in your car, you got airbags to protect you. You get in this
Yes.
body, this vehicle, and there's other mechanisms to try to help to protect you. And part of that is I think that dream state. Sometimes sometimes I've gone to bed with problems on my mind and woke
Mm-hmm.
up. They were solved in my sleep,
Yes.
and I wake up and I have the answer, and it's not as bad as I thought it was. And so
Absolutely. God, I'm
it's
so glad you brought that up. I have, I have that's happened to me, and all of a sudden something really important that I had forgotten. When you wake up, that first thing, when you're just waking up, and all of a sudden it'll pop into my head. I'll go, God, oh yeah, like all of a sudden stuff like gets to your head, that either, like you said, a solution to a problem or something that you was really important for you to remember. It's like you're able to wipe away all the crud that we get in
yeah.
there from everyday life, to look at, which, by the way, because I'm a hypnotherapist, I'm a trained hypnotherapist, and one of the really important things, as a matter of fact, I would give all my clients was suggestions to go into REM sleep, because REM sleep is the level of sleep that you need to do exactly that, to clear out your subconscious, like from all the things that we run around and do all day.
Yeah.
If you go down deep enough into REM, which is what you're supposed to do, it allows you exactly to do what you described. That if you have a problem or something you're trying to figure out, once you go into REM, that's when you basically are able to pull out that information um, out of your subconscious mind.
Yeah, it's almost like we fall asleep and our spirit just kind of pulls the fire alarm, and says, "All right, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
we."
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard that saying. Well, let me sleep on it. Let me. That's more
Oh,
appropriate than
yeah.
a lot of people imagine.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. So, I mean, it's just, I and sometimes I feel, I don't know, I feel weird because there's people like I've talked to guys like Stanton Freeman who
Hmm.
has, his whole life he has been out there doing this UFO thing and trying to bring awareness to it, and him himself has never ever seen one, and
Right.
he's never had a sighting. And I'm thinking, but here I am, just average old me, and I've
Yes.
had paranormal experiences. And I don't make this stuff up. It's just, but I can't explain it and I can't prove it. I could tell you though,
Exactly.
there's so much out there that we just do not understand.
You know what, Michael, and I've said it to for everybody. Because of course nowadays everybody's into trying to capture proof, proof, proof. And I say, you know what? Once you've had that first-hand experience, it doesn't. I mean, it
There's
shouldn't
your proof.
really
And
matter if you can prove it to anybody else or if you can convince anybody else. The thing is that once you have that experience and you've gone and you're like you said a regular average ordinary person, you've kind of gone through the checklist. It's not that, it's not that, it's not that. Oh God, okay, I'm left with this. That's it. Your reality shifts. So even if nobody else ever believed you, or you can never, of course, provide proof, that's your paradigms shift totally as to the edges all of a sudden become really misty. Like, yeah, this is as much as we know or we can see with our senses, but that there's something beyond that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, and I really believe that when people say, like, what's the best evidence that you can ever give me that there's something beyond this life? And I tell them experience. You're gonna,
Yes.
if you ever have an experience, it'll change your life. I mean, for me, I feel like these things prepared me for my lesson. They were for me, not for everyone else. They were
Right.
just lessons for me, and that's why the book is Lessons from the Other Side, because I have these are lessons. These are. I mean, I had back in 2014, for instance. I had a heart attack.
Wow.
The long story short, I was put on, wanted to quit smoking. They put me on some garbage called Chantix. And
Yes, yeah, I know. I'm familiar with that.
oh, yeah, well, it led later on to a heart attack, which I'm okay now. But
That taking
when
the
that happened,
wait, wait, wait.
yeah.
Taking the Chantix led gate. What was it? Too much nicotine or what happened?
Well, well, what it is it's actually a drug for depression, and they
Right. No,
found.
I know that you got to be real careful with the effects, side effects, and thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, well, at the time when I was taking it, they didn't have all the side effects on the box, and
Oh,
without the
wow.
risk and all that. Of course, I didn't have a heart attack yet either, so I didn't get in on the lawsuit for
Sure,
all
sure,
that.
but right, exactly. But you must have. Wow.
Yeah.
Here you are trying to stop smoking and
Oh, it was gonna make me quit smoking, all right. Let me tell you.
permanently.
But my point with it all is though is when that happened, I always, when it's growing up, I always thought of death in it. So I love talking about it, but it spooked me. I was like, death
Right.
just is creepy to me. And because of the experiences I had when I was facing possibly my own death, I had
Yes.
no fear. I just, I was accepting of it. It's if it happens, it happens. And I never thought that I'd handle it that way. You would have told me when I was 20 that I was going to have a heart attack when I was 43.
Yeah.
I would have said, no, I would have probably, been paranoid. But I
Of
mean, at this
course.
point, it's like death doesn't scare me. I don't welcome it, but it
Right,
don't.
exactly. But it's like, and you know what? And that's that's the way it should be. I mean, I remember when you're a teenager in your 20s, as a matter of fact, a lot of times you think nothing bad's going to happen to me. You're like invincible kind of
Well,
thing.
yeah, you think you're going to live forever. I mean, I
Yes.
remember, being 20 and I'm thinking, by the time I'm 40 or 50, they'll probably have a pill that makes us live forever. And
Yeah.
that's how you get through your life. You comfort yourself. And I think that's what our subconscious does for us too sometimes.
Sure.
And
It
these dream
does.
states and all these things, they're there. These are there. It's just all part of our journey.
Yeah, and this is the thing I think. a lot of time when it comes to the paranormal, whether it's ghosts or UFOs or whatever, a one size fit all doesn't work. I think people have experiences that they're supposed to have. Okay, that's like what you said that, Stanton Friedman has worked
Yeah.
for years and years and years. He hasn't had his own firsthand experience. I'm sure he's probably spoken to a gazillion people, many that I'm sure he thought, man, this person is telling me the absolute truth. But it's
Mhm.
just like everybody has their own tailor-made experiences, I think, based on them. And it's like just as individual as our fingerprints. And that's why a lot of people sometimes say, "Wow, man, why does everything happen to this person and not to me or vice versa?"
Right. And and I was talking earlier about the out of body experience I had as an adult, and I'll give you a quick rundown on that.
Sure.
What happened was, I was at that stage. My mother had passed away in 2001,
Okay.
and her and I were pretty close. We were really close. She was like, kind of like my buddy. I could talk to her about anything. And she had contracted cancer and, anyways, passed away in 2001.
Okay.
And in 2004, I was in probably the worst. I don't know. I was probably down on my luck, like the most I've ever been in my life. For one, I was in a relationship with the wrong person.
Okay.
That person was running my business into the ground. I mean, there was just so much going on,
Right.
that I had gone into a depression, which has never happened to me before. It was just incredible. And, I got to a point where I could care less if I lived or died. Now, I
Mhm.
wasn't going to kill myself by no means, but I
Right.
just
No,
didn't
I know what
care.
you're saying.
And well, one night, I think it was Christmas Eve, and I'd kind of, pouted myself to sleep that night. And well, I got a knock on the window about 3:20 a.m. and I noticed the clock. That's why I know what time it was. But I knock at the window. I get up and I open the curtain, and my mother is standing there on the other side of the window. And I'm
Wow.
thinking, holy cow!
Yeah.
I look back, and here I am laying in the bed again. And I'm thinking, oh crap! I finally did it. I'm dead. That's what I thought.
Okay.
I must have died. My mother's coming to get me.
Yeah.
Well, she reaches her hand out, and I put my hand out to hers, and all of a sudden we start traveling. We it's like teleportation. Like we go from that spot over to the house I grew up in, and we're kind of
Okay.
levitating on the ceiling. And long story short, she's showing me my father and my sister, and she's not saying anything to me, but she's telling me stuff. And I don't know how it's happening, but it is. And so her message was basically, it was just for me. It wasn't for the world. The aliens are coming to save us or none of that stuff. She basically told me, Mike, don't do anything stupid. You're going to be
Mhm.
fine. And she told me what was going to take place in the next couple of weeks. And part of that was, my kids were going to be reunited with me. I had a 4-month period where I hadn't seen them,
Wow.
because of, well, we were in separate places and stuff. Well, after all that, I wake up, I zap back in my body, and I wake up and I'm crying like a baby. I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was just another dream. And probably an hour later that morning, a car pulls in the driveway, a horn beeps, and there's my ex, and she's got the
Wow.
kids in the car. I'm like, this is crazy. So then I go to dinner with them, have dinner, with the kids and stuff. I come home, and a friend of mine who I hadn't seen for years, pulls in the driveway. Said, "Hey, I just found where you live. Me and my brother just bought a house. Wondering if you'd be interested in renting a room from us." I needed to get out of where I was. Bam. I
Wow.
mean, so basically everything my mother told me fell in place. So for me,
Okay.
it's confirmed. I mean, it really happened. Now, what
Yes.
happened? I don't know. I don't know what the heck that was. I just know that I was out of my body again, and I
Exactly.
communicated with my mother, and how it happened, I don't know. And she did say one thing, and again, and well, another thing is she told me to tell my father that there is a God. And again, she spoke not with words, but she showed me what she wanted to say. It's weird. It's just I don't know how to explain it.
Come, and this is the thing, I again, everybody, especially when you're going through tough times, sometimes we do have Either how you dream, they say your desires or your fears, and you say,
Yeah.
okay, maybe if you would have had a dream, but it's almost like it was like that within those, like, basically what you're telling me is like 24 hours of you having that dream, all these things happened.
Yes. And the part about her saying there's a God, anyone that knows me knows I am not a religious person. I don't go to church. I'm not preaching Yahweh and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for her to say that, and and here's the thing, I had to call my dad that morning, and I had to tell him because she told me to, and I'm
Right.
like, Dad, you're gonna think I'm crazy. And the first thing he says, he's, Mike, you're not smoking anything, are you? I was like, no. Like, no, I promise you I'm not. She also said that my dad, tell my father that it's not his time, he's got a long ways to go. Well, now 17 years later, my dad is going on 89, he's still here.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just
Exactly.
amazing. And I can't explain it. I don't know how these things happen. They
Right.
do.
That's what I'm saying. That stuff like that. It's like, come on. No matter how, it's like too, you know, the, the coincidence. There's nothing that's too coincidental. I mean, it's just too direct for it to be like, oh, it was just a coincidence that I had this dream. It's like it's just too much. There's too much
And
there
it,
where, okay, your mom, and it's almost like maybe your mom said, if I come to him, he'll believe me, versus if he thinks it's just a wishful dream on his part. Because from what it sounds like, you had a great relationship with your mother,
yeah.
and like you said, you were at your maybe at a very low point in your life, and it's almost like I'm bringing you good news, and just to let you know that it's going to be okay. And coming
Yeah.
from a parent, that usually carries a lot of weight.
Yeah. It seems that parents are still parents, even when they're on the other side.
Yeah.
And I've never had another encounter with her since.
Right.
But I've never been that low again in my life. I mean, it was a point. I think, and what I took out of this is I think that, you know, once somebody is spirit is gone to, wherever they're going, the light or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if it's important enough, if there's a really good reason, I think they're able to come back and somehow intervene. I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, it was what, a few years later that she had came back. I mean, you would think by all the psychics I've spoke to, after a few years, they're reincarnated and all this stuff. Well,
You know
uh,
what? I'm gonna tell you something, Michael. I really think that despite a lot of people, and I know that a lot of people, especially if they've lost somebody that they're really close to, they wanna like, and I'm telling them, I said, you know what? Yes, you do have people that say, on an anniversary they'll get, and I say, but once you have gone beyond it, you don't. In other words, it's like you're gonna work it out. Unless it's something like what was happening to you, they're not going to be coming back every day like some people would like, and
yeah,
hold your hand or anything. It's like you don't understand it, but I do. You need to work it out, and don't worry, you'll get it. For better or worse, you're going to follow your path. But I can't be there holding your hand or guiding you
right.
like if I was alive, because first of all, that's not the way it's meant to be, and second of all, I think you're off doing something else that it's like, oh hey, you know what, handle it. And I'm gonna be doing my thing on the other side, and
Yeah,
and that's it. You know, I tell everybody having dead people around is not really a good thing for the living. I mean, when people constantly, uh, I tell them it's not really good for the living, even if it was a loved one. If for any reason they're trapped here because of guilt
yeah,
or they're confused, because a million reasons, it's not really good. It's not really good. When you're dead, go on into the light, do your thing, come and visit, check out everybody's doing okay, and then that's it. I don't think they're meant to tell us or guide us or about, because I've known of people wanting their deceased loved ones to almost like give their blessing on just about everything they're going to do, and it's like you you're
well,
going to have to
yeah.
just risk it and do something, or if it turns out good, good, and if not, oh well.
And I think that we're just not supposed to know for sure,
Yes.
and I think that's why we're always left with this bit of doubt. Like, was it an out of body experience? Was it just something, that, what was it really? And so I think we're left that way on purpose because if it's like if we knew the truth, it would so affect our life right now.
Yes.
I mean, I just really just like past lives. People say, "Well, I'd like to remember my past life." No, you might not want to because what if you find out you had kids or grandkids in that past, so now you're going to be looking for them, and it's just
Right.
going to interfere with your mission now. So I don't think we're supposed to know these things.
You know what? I did a lot of past life regressions on people um, for different reasons, and the majority of them had some type of expectations about what their past lives might be.
Yeah, nobody's ever the janitor, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Right. Exactly. Or a certain period or a certain country or what. And the suggestion always is when you're putting somebody to do that is, well, what is the most appropriate thing for this person to see? Okay. I have
Yeah.
yet to come across anybody who went to a life that fitted to what their expectations were. And I would tell them, this doesn't mean that you didn't. We asked for the most appropriate thing. But I have yet to find anybody that, like, oh, I knew I was a Southern Belle, an antebellum, whatever. No, nope. Or same thing, they could see themselves surprisingly in a different sex. You're a woman, you see yourself as a man, vice versa. And the bulk, I want to say, the no, haven't had any famous people. Everybody was very ordinary. Um, and later on, when I would discuss, and some of them understood very clearly at that moment why they saw. Some of them were like totally wigged out that they had that with the experience and what they saw themselves as. Some of them got right away why they saw what they did, and others it took them sometimes a couple of weeks for them to get it. And
Oh,
but I'm telling you, nobody ever had that. Like I knew it, that epiphany moment where I knew it, and usually it's because I want to say like what is it that they say? Everybody's thinking I'm Cleopatra, and it's like no, you're not.
well, right, and that's like I've had on my show. I've had folks who come on and say, well, they can help people, figure out what they were in their past lives, and some nights will be going on and going on, and I'll tell them, I'll say, nobody's ever the janitor. I mean, they're always,
Yeah.
a princess this, or they were part of the
Yes.
Revolutionary War, or they or general that led this or that. I mean, somebody had to change the liners in the garbage can. I mean,
No,
right?
the truth is that historically, yeah, you read about these people, but the bulk of humanity was, for lack of a better word, unnamed and faceless.
Yeah.
That is the truth. That's the human condition. Yeah, you read about these people, these historical figures or whatever, they're famous, but let's
Yeah.
say the odds are very, very, very high against that. I know that some people have had experiences where luckily because they've gotten a name and it's a recent history. In other words, when I say recent, as in when there are actual records kept, that they were able to find this person that they were. But again, that's a really slim because record keeping and getting a name, that's a difficult thing. Most people don't get that. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
get a name, yeah, I was so and so that lived in the village of somewhere in the middle of nowhere long before nobody ever tracked stuff like that.
You know what? The ones that amaze me, and you're probably familiar with this, but when you get these kids, like there's this one with this kid, little
Right.
kid, I don't know, what was he, 4 or 5 years old, somewhere in there. And he kept telling his parents he had a toy plane, a fighter plane.
Right, that
And
he
he
was a fighter pilot.
Yeah, I forget what he said, little something down. And they never knew what the heck it meant. Well,
Right.
this kid was able to say what division he was in, where his plane went down, who his friends were. I mean, he knew all this
Right.
stuff. And, and then some people accuse all the parents schooled them. Look, I've got kids, I've had
No.
6 of my own, And I could tell you what, I could never school all that in them. I mean,
No,
just
no. Anybody that's had children will tell you, come on. No. I,
yeah,
I think it might, I think that a lot of it has to do, number one, it was a recent past life. Number two, if I remember correctly, and I know what story you're talking, I want to say that I believe he crashed in his plane. In other words, it was like a very, um, it was a bad ending for him.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and I want to say that sometimes, that's what I'm saying. That's another thing. It was at a time when records were being kept, and he got, in other words, there was a reference point to be able to do research.
exactly. And I think they even found the plane.
Exactly. And that's that right there makes all the difference in the world because the majority of other stuff there's just no way of ever saying conclusively this person did exist, or you can either say no, it didn't exist. And again, I've had people that have asked me, Michael, oh, do you believe in reincarnation? And I said, well, you know what, I've had people come to me. I mean, some of them come just out of plain curiosity. I want to find
Yeah.
out who I was in a past life. And I've had others who've come to me in an effort to resolve some type of phobia. Okay, and by this I differentiate that from fear. You can have a fear of something, but if you have a fear of something, you understand why. You have a fear of dogs. You were bit as a kid, for example. You know why you're scared. A phobia is when you're scared of something and you can't. There's no history or reason why. So we
Yeah.
do the past life regression effort, and I tell people I've had clients and other people have read about it where them going back and doing a past life regression and seeing some lifetime where this happened to them more than once, where they understand now the phobia, where the phobia originates from. Okay, and coming out of it, they're able to overcome the phobia. Prior to this, by the way, they've gone through different types of treatments or anything, and it hasn't worked. A phobia, you can't help yourself. So when people ask me, do you believe it? I said, I believe in the results. In other words, I can't prove one way or the other, but I've had enough experiences of people getting benefits from it. And I've had people that will tell me, oh, when I was having that regression, it wasn't because, you can put them into observer mode, like if you're watching a movie versus a first-hand experience. They'll
Yeah.
tell you, like one lady I had, she was seeing herself as a Greek sailor. She says, I was smelling the ocean. I was smelling the ocean even though she was sitting in the living room in her home. And it's so real. It's so vivid. It's more than
Huh.
what you get as a movie because you don't go to the theater and start smelling the scene. That, and of course, a lot of it also has to do with the person's suggestibility and how good, they let themselves go. But yeah,
Yeah.
whether it really exists or not, reincarnation as in past lives or whatever, if it's just, it does work with a lot of things that other treatments just don't work well with.
And I've always been on the fence with it. I mean, I think that there is, but I think there's some kind of, I don't know, there's some kind of rhyme or reason for those who do reincarnate. I don't know what the answers are there, but I think there is some sort of, for some reason there is some reincarnation now. Well, the thing that gets me is if we do reincarnate, if we do have to come back,
Hmm.
here's the kicker, and I think maybe God's got a hell of a sense of humor here, but so we come into this life, we struggle most of our life until we
Right.
get to later in life. I don't know. Say for me, my late 30s, I start figuring out who I am, what I'm gonna do, and so on and so forth. And by the time you get established there, you're pushing late 40s, 50,
Right.
and so once you finally get established on what you're going to do with your life, it's like, you don't have too much of it left. And then I'm told that we got to come back and start over again. And I'm thinking that's just not right.
Well, and you know what? There's a lot of different, schools of thought as far as reincarnation. But my understanding is that, and that makes the most sense. Everybody's, like you said, everybody's got a different life. Everybody deals with different things depending. But it's almost like when you go, you have a choice. It's not like you're forced, like, hey, It's almost like you say, you know what? I'm going to go back when and how I want to go back. Maybe working on a, let's say, circumstances or being born into circumstances that's going to help me figure this out where in my prior lifetime, I just like, I just, because, you know, people are, we have our good points and our bad points, and it's
Yeah.
almost like it gives you a chance to like, let's work on that part.
I mean, what if this life is just, what if it's a really good piece of technology? Like think about it. We got our kids today. They like the virtual reality. They
That
love
Matrix
going
kind of
on
mentality,
glasses.
that's not,
Yeah,
why
and go
not?
into another world. So what if we're all standing in line on the other side saying, "Oh, I can't wait to get back on this ride." And so we're getting in and we're coming in for this experience. And this
Sure.
is, you know, I it could be that simple. I mean,
Well, you
who
you know you have people that will. There's theories out there that reincarnation does is not just like, oh, I'm going to reincarnate into another human being on the planet Earth kind of thing. In other words, that we also live lives in other planets or other universes as other types of life forms, and and that's when you start going, okay, I again, I can't say no. I mean, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
here we go, but why not? How can you can't prove it, but you can't disprove it either.
Yeah, I mean, and there's just exactly, and there's just so much we don't know that I think if we did know, we couldn't be human. I think our minds would fry. I
I
just
know, I
it's
know.
it's amazing. I mean, but these things exist. I mean, there's probably I was just talking to my son about this. There's probably many universes, many dimensions. I mean,
Yes.
there's so much out there that we probably just go from one ride to the next.
Well,
You
and
know?
it's almost like I think about it and I go, it almost exactly like what you pointed out, like that. If we knew certain things, it would take the fun. It's almost like you're in to see this great movie, but if you already know the way it ends or what's going to happen, it's like, all right. It's almost like, okay, if you're going to engage, let's go with the planet Earth scenario. Let's keep it here. And let's say, and you're supposed to be. Um, you've incarnated into this plane where you need a skin suit, a spirit in a skin suit to work around, to manipulate things, and to be in nature.
Yeah.
And you have all these senses that you're given. I can see where being aware of certain things, it would just ruin everything. You could do it. You could do it.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I kind of look at it as, like when people ask me what's an out of body experience like, and the one that I had as an adult, I can say it was like it's like driving to the top of the mountain in your car. And okay, you're looking around, you're still in your vehicle and you're looking around, you're limited to what you can see. And then
Right.
you open that car door and you stand up on the hood and you can see everything. And that's kind of what or an out of body experience is like. It's like you have access to things that your human mind just could never comprehend. And so then you're left when you wake up to wondering, okay, did this really happen or not? Because it's like getting a computer from 1995 and trying to run,
Yeah.
Windows 10 on it now. I
Yeah,
mean, it's just
exactly.
it can't handle it.
And, one of the things, and I don't know if you've had other experiences, Michael, and maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from on this. One of the things that, and I'm sure you've heard of remote viewing.
Oh yeah.
Now, one of the things that, and I've had personal experience, which maybe I'll go into, I don't know, depends. Where, for example, one time, I don't know if you've heard of Father Malachi, Martin Malachi, or that
Oh yeah, Malachi.
Malachi. He
Malachi
died,
Martin.
I think, I want to say 98, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. He was.
And he talked about something called the middle plane. Okay. And the
Mhm.
reason why that came up is that usually this plane is where, when you remote view, or in some cases when you have an out of body experience, this is the plane that you travel to. It's like, I want to say, like an interdimensional kind of like in between place
Yeah,
that
yeah,
allows you to, even though your physical body is at a certain place, your mind or your spirit or all together, whatever your self awareness is able to travel through this space and time to go to other places or see other things. Now, one of the things that he talked about was in this middle plane, you do have otherworldly beings such as non-human entities, demons, and in other words, that this was you had to be really careful when you were going to the middle plane if you didn't know what you were doing because it's not you're not by yourself. Have you ever had any experiences with anything along those lines, either remote viewing or when you were doing having an OBE experience?
No, I've never been a remote viewer, but I've had remote viewers on my show. I've
Mm-hmm.
talked with Courtney Brown, for instance, and again, it's one of those things that is very real, and
Right.
these people are able to go and collect information that they couldn't otherwise have unless they were there. I mean,
Yes.
and I should also mention that the United States government and
Yeah.
Russia and many other
Yes.
governments even have put millions and millions and
Mm-hmm.
millions of dollars into this research, not because they're hoping that they get a bingo, it's because they know they're going to get a bingo. I mean, that's
Right. Yeah. That's
so,
that's what a lot of people say. Oh, I was like, oh, if they would have experimented on it and it wasn't giving, even if it gave a little bit, but it wasn't any worthwhile, they would have cut that loose a long time ago.
yeah, absolutely. And, but I have had an experience with negative entities once, which was another case. That's the episode that was on TV there. They covered it pretty well.
Okay.
Paranormal Survivor. They did a pretty good job on it. I think a little bit of it, there was a little more smoke than what was happened in my case. But anyways,
Okay.
I had moved into an apartment. You remember I just told you that the friend that I haven't seen in a long time come over and offered to rent me a room.
Right. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
that friend and his brother, they were twins, decided to buy a building. They bought this building in Rochester, New York. It had a fire previously, and this building's been out of commission for probably, I don't know, 10, 11 years. It was just sitting there. So they buy it. They figure, well, we could fix it up. Well, they subcontracted me to help them, as a matter of fact. So we're working on it. So this building gets renovated, and it got renovated really nice, and they offered me an apartment in it. So I went from renting a room from them to renting an apartment in the new building that they had purchased.
Okay.
Well, that place, it didn't take long. I think the very first night we started hearing stuff, and by probably midweek, the first week there, cabinet doors opening and closing. If you're laying in bed, you could hear the. You ever have someone open up a kitchen cabinet just enough
Yes,
for
I've
somebody
had that. Yeah, I
tap
know
tap tap?
exactly what you mean.
Well, all the cabinets were doing that. I mean, I had that going on. We had light power going off in certain rooms. Um, Stereos coming on. The stereo would come on at like 3:20. Here we go again with that 3:20 in the morning.
Right.
3:20 in the morning, stereo comes on loud. I mean, I at one point thought my son was doing it, so I came out and I unplugged it, and the sucker came on again on
Oh
that.
my God.
And at this point, I mean, I went next door across the hall and I talked to the woman across the hall and asked her, "Is there anything unusual happening over here? Have you noticed anything?" And she says, "No, no, no." She says, "Just a mouse that's making noise in my kitchen." And I'm thinking, all right. So I called exterminator. I says, "All right, maybe it is mice." Well, so I didn't see no turds nowhere or nothing
Right,
like that.
right. Yeah, yeah. They do. They leave droppings all over the place.
Yeah, so I said, but let me do it anyway. So exterminator comes, sets traps. He says he sees no sign of anything, but we'll leave him anyways. Nothing. He didn't catch. There was no mice. The power going out in my bed. So here's what would happen. Every time I would boot up my computer, I had a brand new computer. I'd boot it up and I'd try to look up the history of the building. And when I did, the power would go out in the building or in my room,
What?
my bedroom. So I thought something was wrong with the computer. I bring it
Okay.
back. The guy has it there for days, nothing wrong with it. So, long story short, this place had activity in it. There was a little girl and her father, and the little girl died of smoke inhalation in the closet of my bedroom, which I didn't.
Oh.
The father died in the hallway trying to escape. And so, shame on him for leaving his little
Yeah, I was
girl.
about to say, wow.
Yeah. And so now he had a Freddy Krueger kind of voice. You would hear like almost like a growling, snarling voice. The little girl, on the other hand, was much different. And
Mm-hmm.
I did EVPs one night, not a professional at it. I learned it off the back of a CD. And so I tried it one night and I told the little girl, or I didn't know who it was at that point. And I said, I
Right.
lit up a cigarette and I said, "Oh, you can't have none because you're dead." Well, when I played the tape back, right after I says, "Because you're dead," the little girl answers and says, "So who cares?" And I'm thinking, a little girl on the other side who don't care. This is not
Whoa.
good. So, but in the end, they tried to burn the place back down with me in it, and so I moved out. And
Yeah. It's like,
yeah, I mean, and again, I'm not one of those people get the book, but it is in the book, and you
and
can also find the episode Paranormal Survivor. It's actually on my website if people want to go check it out.
let me ask you, when what had that been like a house, or had it always been apartments, or was it one of these houses that they had? You know how they divvy them up later on and make them into
Yeah.
apartments?
No, this was like a brick apartment building, and so it had several apartments in it,
Okay,
upstairs
so
and
it was
down.
always okay. It was always
Yeah, it
apartments.
was always an apartment, but it had a bar at one end, and the bar is where the fire took
Okay,
place. And then, of course, it went through some of the building, and the smoke got through, and
sure.
which is what caused the death, really.
Right, yeah, that's the way most people die in fires, is the smoke inhalation.
But get this, on the last day I was in that apartment, I'm sleeping in bed and I my eyes open and I opened my eyes because I smelled something. I smelled something burning. And I look up and I'm wondering why is the room so bright? And I look over to my left and the plastic blinds are off the window and they're over on the right side of the room, laying on my electric heater melting. And I'm thinking, I'm
What?
the only one there. It's just me. I'm the only one in the place at the time. So yeah, so that was a sign to me that said, get the hell out of here. It was time to go. And when I told my friends who were the
Mm-hmm.
landlords about this, they thought I was kind of crazy and didn't believe me and thought I was just trying to get out of my
Okay.
house, which I wasn't. And so I moved, and one brother decided to move into my apartment
Oh.
after I moved out. And he had later had brain aneurysms, heart attacks, and he died. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I know after that, the other brother put a for sale sign on the building, and they did sell the building. And when I asked him why they sold it, he told me, don't, never mind, don't worry about it.
Right. I mean, you got ahead of me because I was about to ask you, hey, did they ever rent it out to anybody else, and did that person have the experience? And God Almighty.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I mean this is this crazy world, and I think this is what's led me to do my show late night in the Midlands, and it certainly had a lot to do with it because I never planned on doing radio. It was not even in my radar, and it fits. So this is what I do, and I bring on other guests and I talk to them about all these things, and I try to I put it to this to my listeners. I say I'm trying to put together a puzzle, and every night when I have a guest on, I get a new little piece to the puzzle. I don't think
Okay.
I'll ever get the whole puzzle, but I'm trying. And so that's basically what I'm doing every night, just
So
trying
you
to.
were, in other words, you were the first tenants after that fire. It had
I,
what had
yeah,
been empty.
yeah, that's it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, not good. And I had electric heat too, by the way. I mean, one night the blinds started, coming up away from the wall and slamming, like someone was picking them up and just throwing them against the wall. And my son was there for that one that night. And again, there's no blowers blowing heat out. It was
Right.
all electric radiators in this place. And so, it's just something I'll never forget. And to this day, I still pinch myself and ask,
Let
what
me.
the heck
Did they
was.
did they ever determine why the original fire? What happened? Why the original fire started?
You know what? Every time I go to look it up, it's like I can look up online. It'll come up like in the search, and then when I click it, there's nothing there. It's like I to this day I still can't get the information. I've even gone down to City Hall
Really?
in Rochester and asked, and there's records missing. There really is. I don't know. I don't know what exactly started it. I just know that it did start in the bar. Maybe
I
that.
was because I'm thinking that is so interesting
Yeah.
because it makes you, because let me tell you something, those are two, I mean, I'm going to bring this up. I'm about to publish a book that's coming out now in December, and it's called Supernatural Safety. And one of the parts I talk about supposedly or child spirits. And I tell everybody, I go, you know what? You got to be really careful with some child spirits. Number one, some kids, children, either one they're disguised, or
Yeah.
everybody always thinks, oh, it's a little kid, and it's like you still got to be really careful with entities, even if they're children, because if they're malevolent, which there is such a thing, and I don't want to get into that
Yeah.
creepy kid thing, because I think it's overdone. But just because it's a child doesn't mean it's wholesome, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, kids are the creepiest for me. For the other side, I mean, having an apparition, an Undertaker looking guy would freak me out, but a child would really freak me out. Children, they get, I don't know, maybe I've watched too many movies.
Right? Well, it's disturbing because we always, let's face it, we always think of children as being innocent, or even when they do bad things, they're not malicious. And then when you see them purposely, it's like you get those things of the bad seed kind of thing. Like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Um, but
yeah,
who knows what
absolutely.
was going on there? That, so let me tell you something. I'm telling you, Michael, almost like what you're describing, and is like that's a very malevolent and God, that's a very scary haunting that you had there.
Yeah, yeah, it was. And like I didn't last there long. I don't know, it was a little over a month.
Thank God
Sometimes
you got out of there, though.
Yeah, I mean, because well, at first it was fun. It was like, ooh, you're excited. You're like, ooh, because this stuff is real. Let me see what's going on. But then when it starts getting, where they're trying to burn stuff
No, that's
and
pretty. Like
it
this
picks
is.
up. It's like it starts off at little childish pranks, and then it starts getting into more serious stuff where someone's going to get hurt. And at that point, it's time to leave. And I'm glad nothing followed me, at least not that I know
No, you would have. I'm sure you would have known by now.
of.
Whatever it was, I think stayed behind with one of the brothers.
Yeah, I think so. And as a matter of
God.
fact, the other brother who owned the building, he had a heart attack too, but he's okay now. So I don't
But
know.
still, it's like you said. Maybe one thing has nothing to do with the other. But God, what are the chances?
Yeah, I know. All three of us, we renovated the building. All three of us had heart attacks.
And like you said, what happened in the apartment because you even asked the neighbors, so it was all about the actual place that you were in.
Yeah, 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 exactly. The place I was in, that's where the death took place. And of course, if I knew this from the beginning, I wouldn't. I don't even think they knew it. I don't even think the brothers knew this. I mean, because if they did, I don't. They were kind of really religious type people, and I think that if they knew that, they wouldn't have touched the place. But who
Well,
knows? I may never know.
you know, I know that, especially nowadays when like I said, people keep records of everything, and I know that now there's even laws in certain states where they consider a property stigmatized, like you have to disclose if there's been a death, a murder,
Yeah,
even in some cases if it's considered haunted. But I tell everybody, you know what? Not too long ago, when I mean not too long ago, is it maybe 50 or 60? People would be born at home and die at home. And this was very normal. So people dying in a house doesn't necessarily absolutely mean it's going to be haunted.
that's
Because
right.
it's not like now where people pass away a lot of times in either nursing homes or hospitals. People would die at the house, and then you would have the wake at the
Yeah,
house. And that
yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean somebody dying there is going to add up to a ghost.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And some people, a lot of times, people prefer to die at home. I mean, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
they're going to haunt the
Hmm.
place. They might haunt the place if you don't respect their wishes and don't let them die at home.
Well, yeah, I'll, and it's true. And nowadays, there's true. Some people, if they're terminally ill, they'd rather go home, especially when there's, it's just, they're not going to be cured and they're just under treatment and they'd rather go home, and that's understandable. And as a matter of fact, I say 9 times out of 10, most people have made their peace as far as like, I'm going to die. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's how it is. I mean, I know through experience back years ago, I almost drowned it. And when I thought it was over and there was no hope, I just accepted it. It's like, okay, I'm about to die. I mean, there's nothing you
Right.
could do. When it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. I mean,
Right.
so
No, yeah, I want to say that there's more to personalities or spirits or whatever you want to call it that decide I'm going to stay behind. It's just not the question that they died there for whatever. Just there's just something else behind it. What drives a person to get stuck in between one and the other?
it could be their frequency, and maybe they've got to change that before they can enter. It's like having the golden ticket to get through the gate. Maybe someone's guarding that gate and not letting that bad energy get through. I don't know. I don't know what.
Well, I think some of them do it by choice. I think other people because some people sometimes don't realize they're dead because their self awareness is there.
Yeah,
And maybe they miss the part about the light, or if you know how they say your loved ones come to get you, and if you don't know or don't understand you're dead, and your dearly departed relatives come for you, you're like, hey man, you're dead, I'm not going with you. You kind of miss that moment.
yeah,
um, and I think that sometimes, but they just don't understand they're dead, or they don't want to accept it. Maybe they were medicated, heavily medicated, or what if you were one of these people that thought that when you die, that was the end of it, your consciousness, and all of a sudden, that's not the
and,
case.
and I
What do you
think
do
that's
then?
what.
It's like, oh, what is this? Nobody hears
Yeah,
me,
well,
nobody sees me, but it's me. What? What's this about? I thought this was over. I thought I took the dirt nap. It's
well,
why am I?
yeah. I think that's where a lot of these ghosts who stick behind. That's probably where a lot of them come from. They don't believe that they're going anywhere, so they're stubborn, and maybe they stick around because they don't want to accept. I don't know. For me, after I'd be calling you a few times and you don't answer me, I'd start to wonder what's going on.
Right.
You know?
Yes. Yes. And but at the same time, one of the things that a lot of people say, well, I don't believe cemeteries can be haunted. Like if anybody's going to be left behind, they're going to go back home or wherever they're going to go, scene of their death.
Yeah,
And I said, you'd be surprised. Sometimes you will have spirits or ghosts. I want to say ghosts. Spirits I usually refer to as people that understand they're dead and their transition. And I'm saying a ghost, somebody that's died violently, tragically. They were maybe heavily medicated. They were in denial, whatever.
yeah,
They see their body, but they can't get back in their body for whatever reason. It's dead, or maybe it's really messed up. But they follow their body around because it's my body, and they just don't understand what's going on with them. So a lot of times they'll go from where they died to maybe medical examiner to the funeral home, whatever that the trajectory is for that body, and it ends up in the cemetery. If that's the case, for example, I'm gonna use the burial in a cemetery plot. And I think a lot of them kind of like, it's like, okay, they're burying my body, but they're just going to stick around and hang out here and kind of be lost. And I think some of them eventually find their way. And then others, that's why you sometimes get these weird photographs of certain like people or images in cemeteries every once in a while.
yeah,
Uh, because then you would think, well, why won't they go back to their houses? Because basically they're just kind of confused, and they just is the last point where I saw my body go into the ground. And now that I'm, maybe there's other dead that they're hanging out there, like, oh, you too. What happened? I don't know, or depends. And they just don't go any further. Kind of stuck in that limbo kind of thing.
yeah,
And that's why I think sometimes people have those experiences in cemeteries, despite why people would think, well, that would be the last place that you would have a haunting. I'm, I think that you know that famous picture that they have that this lady took in the 90s of Bachelor's Grove up in Chicago. That cemetery is, I think it's called the Madonna Bachelor's Grove, which
Oh
is
yeah,
the girl sitting like on a, it looks like on a stump, um,
yeah.
and it's never been disproved, you know.
Hmm.
And in other words, and they really, she was close to a certain grave, but they really don't know who she is per se. And I think that falls into that category that you just kind of hang out there because
Yeah.
I don't know really what happened to me, but my body's in there somewhere, I think, and I'll just be here. And every once in a while, I'll observe people when they come to the cemetery, and it's. I mean, again, I think they're like you pointed out, Michael. There's just certain things you're never going to understand or know until
Yeah.
you're there yourself. You're dead, in other words.
Yeah, I agree. And, all we can do is keep going forward. Don't fear what we don't know because we don't know. And there's
No.
no reason to fear death because I don't see, and it's just a horrible word, death, because I
Yes.
don't believe that's what it is. While we may be leaving this world, I think we're being born in another one somewhere.
Possibly. God,
Some,
I mean, even UFOs, people now think, well, what if everybody's thinking, they're coming from another planet as in linear space, like, and maybe they're inter or intradimensional beings. That's how they get around. Maybe they just use the ship here or their whatever their vehicles or what how they're using because they're here but when they're not here, I mean that again, this is when it's like the edges of the horizon just drop off and you're like, okay, whatever's out there, I don't know what it is. Talia, I wanted to thank you so
right.
much for spending this time. It has been fascinating talking to you
I've really
about your
enjoyed it too.
experiences.
Yeah, if you ever want to do it again, just let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't know if you had a good Thanksgiving, but if not,
Yes,
happy Thanksgiving. It was only a couple of days ago, and happy holidays because we're going towards that real fast.
right.
But
Well,
thank
hey, same to you and yours. And I hey, maybe sometime I should have you on my show. So,
Absolutely. Just let me know. Thank you so much. It has been fantastic, and I want to wish you the best of luck going into the new year.
all right, you too, Marlene, and thank you so much.
Likewise. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
So, what did you think, guys? Fascinating, right? Yeah. I'm, you know, in case you didn't recognize him in the picture that I have of Michael, he was in one of the Paranormal Survivor uh, episodes. I don't know which one that is per se. I want to. I think it's in the first season, but I'm not positive. But anyway, and of course he has his own radio station, L&M Radio, and I'm going to have a link to it in the credits. I think it's lnmradio.com, I believe. And he does. This is from what I understand, his show deals with the paranormal, UFOs, all things of, different but interrelated sometimes. And it's interesting, again, when you see somebody that has experiences as a young child, almost like he wasn't, no, no heavy meditation, stuff that sometimes people do, especially as adults, to have that out of body experience. It's like, here it is. Um, and that what he described with his mother, that is like, for lack of a better word, it's breathtaking. But at the same time, it's almost like as if you're a parent, you will understand that if there was any moment that you would step in and, like, in other words, comfort your child, even, because remember, even though your child is an adult, it's still your child. That you would think that if there was any time that a parent was going to step in and lend a helping hand from the other side, like he said, he's never had that experience again, was such a moment as what he described that he was going through at that moment. And I bring this up because I hear a lot of people that are caught up in, thinking that their loved ones that have gone on to the other side are constantly around. And I beg to differ. I don't think that's the case. I think that they come back and check in on you, and maybe in a situation like what happened with Michael, they'll they'll throw you a rope kind of thing, like, hey, especially because of the relationship that he had with his mom when they were living, when she was living. But I think that they kind of step back, once they've gone on, because number one, they're doing their own thing. Number two, I think that you have an understanding of that you're living and you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to make decisions. That free will kind of thing, which is you're going to have to figure it out and you're going to have to make choices. And you're going to have to make judgment calls, and some of them are going to work out great, and some of them you're going to fall flat on your face. Some of them, in some cases, are even deadly, depending on what the situation is, because that's how it works. Um, and almost like, again, us as human beings, we see time linear as far as events, past, present, future. And maybe once you are dead and not stuck in between, and you've gone on to whatever lies beyond, you realize you're going to be okay one way or the other, as in this was something that your soul chose as to the life you are going to lead. And then as you go down through your life, you come to forks in the road, choices. Some choices are little choices and they're not big deals. It's like, and then other ones are more significant. But ultimately, even your parent, they can, because um, ultimately we do what we want. I mean, even now, with our own parents, when you're a kid as you're growing up, especially let's say when you're teenagers, most parents try to give good advice to their kids, and the kids are like, huh? Yeah, I'm not gonna do what you say just because you're my parent. And I think that we come into the world by ourselves, even twins, but you know what I'm saying. And a lot of people, and I've spoken about this other times, and I think a lot of people misconstrue or fear being responsible for yourself, as in responsible for your choices, responsible for the outcomes, sometimes good, sometimes bad, fear of being wrong. And they kind of like let go. They're so scared of that responsibility that they give control to other people, entities, even the government, whatever. Because, hey, I'd rather not be in control, not be responsible, but that way I'll be told what to do. And if something goes wrong, it'll be somebody else's fault. It's like, let me tell you something. I think that free will slash responsibility part of being a human being is one of the most empowering things that a human being can have. I think that a lot of people sometimes suffer deep anxiety even though they don't see it for what it is, because they feel they have no control over their lives, but they're more scared about making the wrong choice than they are about feeling like, well, my thoughts, my actions, my life maybe has been planned out. Or let me tell you something. I'd rather be responsible. I'd rather have control over things, because that means I have the power to change things. I am the author of my story. And if it turns out good, great. And if it turns out bad, oops. Some things, obviously, I'm going to make mistakes. Maybe some are going to be horrendous mistakes and others not. And then hopefully, like they say, the best outcome out of some of these mistakes is that you realize I cannot do that again. I won't punish myself, and I'm going to let myself off the hook. In other words, forgive yourself and forgive others. But we're talking about the context of your person. By this I don't mean like, oh, you're never wrong. It's like, yeah, man, I f that up really good. I don't think I'm going to do that again. I think I'm gonna learn not to do that again. That means sometimes we don't take our own advice, and we need to stumble over the same rock a few times. But I'd rather have that. I'd rather have that responsibility of, but at the same time, I have control. I have control, and ultimately, bad, good, and by the way, again,
I don't think a lot of people sometimes are you're supposed to be perfect, or and nowadays with social media when everybody thinks the spotlight's on you and everybody's watching you, and every little if you do something wrong or you wear the wrong, the humiliation, the embarrassment, man, we have a lot of teenage suicides that come with that. And it's like, okay, mundanely, yes, we should be careful about posting stuff up on social media. Hello, absolutely. But that this is like the spotlight that will forever and ever be there. No. Let me tell you something. Unless you happen to be some mega celebrity, and even then it fades, unless somebody wants to dig it up in the future. Those horrible moments, they come and they go and they disappear. And unfortunately, we think, oh my God, everybody here knows about this and everybody will remember. Sometimes I can't remember what I wore the last week. Do you think anybody remembers? No. And sometimes the point I guess I'm trying to make is that when we make mistakes, sometimes really serious ones, and sometimes when just like, man, it's out there and it was all you. Let's say you're going down this track of, I'm responsible, I did it, I handled it, I made the decision, and you maybe you made a huge one. And later on, you're thinking, this will haunt me forever. Not really. You'd be surprised how short people's memories are. Especially not, they'll, 9 times out of 10, most people are, they're paying attention to themselves or their stuff or their families. And then it fades. So this thing that you're thinking, oh, forever and ever, I will be marked. I will have a scarlet A on my chest and everybody will know that person. Guess what? No. It'll be uncomfortable. It might even be really embarrassing depending on what happened or who knows. And then guess what? It fades. It goes by. All right? I'm sure there's people out there, and I'm going to say this because of the benefit of the doubt of my age, where you think, "Oh my God, nobody will ever forget about this, or this was so hard." And then with the patina of age, first of all, it either becomes laughably funny, and you'll hear people say, "Hey man, do you remember when we were in high school, or when we back then it was like earth stopping." And it's either laughable or not as serious. And I know it's easier said than done when you're living in that moment. But I guess what I'm saying is that when you're responsible and you are handling it and you make the wrong move and bad things happen, and right at that moment you're like thinking, man, I just wish I could like find a hole to crawl into, that moment will pass. And at the end of it, you dust yourself off and you say, but I'm still in control. I'm still handling this. To use a really well used, I'm the captain of the ship. Okay. And that's it. And you keep going forward. And I think that as human beings, that is really what we should all strive for, to be the captains of the ship. And I think that even in the afterlife, and this is just my opinion, my belief, that I think that personalities like that, for better or for worse, that had this kind of striving, I think that once you die, you don't get stuck. I mean, there's a self determination or less regrets or guilt or whatever. And so they're like, I'm going to duke this out while I'm alive. And so when you die, you very little reason to hang out because you've always kind of like been handling it the best way you can. And that's the most ordinary, perfect way of saying it. You're handling it the best way you can, the best with what you got. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And again, I mean, I have my own theories as far as you know, uh, things that happen to people, as far as why certain people, certain personalities, usually are the ones that make up ghosts, or people that stay behind to haunt. That's a whole nother show. And I hope you liked listening to the conversation with Michael. I think he's a fascinating guest. I urge you to check him out on his website, on his radio show. He also has that book out, Lessons from the Other Side, or Lessons from Life, I believe it is. Guys, thank you very much for coming back every week, joining me so that we listen or talk to interesting people out there. I think it's just as fascinating. You know, like I say before, despite all our technologies and advancements and supposedly mysteries that are disappearing, just as some things are explained, believe me, new ones are coming up. So catch me Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, My True Believers. Don't forget to send in your stories. You can go to miamighostchronicles.com. You've got links to the shows, links to the M3P files for the actual podcast downloads, or links to different podcast platforms such as iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Podmatic, Podbean, you name it. If that's what you're using to listen to podcasts, I got a link on the website that'll shoot you straight over there. Also, I hope you pick up my new book that's going to be coming out now in December. It's going to be available at miamighostchronicles.com and Amazon and other websites, which is entitled Supernatural Safety, a DIY Guide to the Paranormal. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. It talks about what I'm talking about here, empowering yourself, about what thing you can do when you run across a paranormal situation, before or even if you have to call in a paranormal team. There's a lot of in-betweens, one and the other. So again, guys, thank you very much, and you are all wonderful. Take care. Happy holidays.